What if there was no wind? Chris, how about you? What did you do with yours?
So when I was thinking about no wind, the first thing that came to my mind was plants and trees, because we don't look at plants and trees enough on this show. And my first thought was that, like, plants use wind to, like, blow seeds around and blow pollen around, and that's how they, like, spread. So without wind, all of them would die. I wanted to see if this was actually true. So, like I said, wind blows seeds around. So, like, a perfect example of this is, like, dandelions, where they have the feathered seeds and you blow them away. Or, like, maple seeds, they have those little winged attachment things, so the seed, like, flutters to the ground.
Yeah.
Another example are tumbleweeds. Those are, like, an unusual version of spreading seeds through wind. And then, yeah, the pollen gets spread by wind too. So I wanted to see what would happen to a plant if a plant that relies on these things doesn't have wind. And there is one example called the swamp pink. That's, like, the name of the plant. So this plant was in a bunch of different places, but they have found it in places that have been, like, deficient in wind. And what happens is it clusters because it can't really spread out. So, like, a bunch of plants cluster into, like, one spot, and it ends up self-fertilizing itself.
Sorry, that sounds a little dirty.
Oh, it is.
It's not a little dirty. And I guess, like, 48.7% of all plants are incapable of self-fertilization. So for plants that end up clustering up and can't self-fertilize, they're just going to die out. The swamp pink can self-fertilize. So what happens if it can is that it gets low genetic diversity, which means that it's very susceptible to, like, pathogens and viruses. So, like, if there's a virus that can kill it, then it's going to wipe out the whole thing just because they're all, like, genetically uniform.
I mean, there's another side to that. It's super duper immune to other viruses.
That's true, I guess.
No one ever talks about the bad side of biodiversity, where it's like, somebody's going to get the common cold. But, like, you know, maybe if we were all the same, this common cold would just, nobody would get it, because it's like, oh, we just happen to be immune to that one. Fuck off. Fuck off our whole species, cold.
Sure. But then if a deadly virus comes and everyone's the same, then everyone dies.
You know, you take your odds, I'll take mine.
Tomato.
This swamp pink actually does spread its seeds through water too. So it's not, the wind isn't the only way it does it, but it is getting kind of hurt by the lack of wind. Its conservation status right now is in what they call vulnerable, and that they say that's, like, quote unquote at risk. So it's not, like, extinct yet. It's not endangered, but it's at risk. So that's what can happen for plants like that. But plants don't only spread their seeds through wind. As I mentioned, they can also spread it through water. It's actually better through water because it can go further distances.
Right.
The palm tree actually uses, like, ocean currents to spread its seeds. So it can, like, spread its seeds across the ocean, and that's better. It can some plants spread their seeds through animals. So, like externally, where it, like, latches onto animal fur or something. 5% of all trees do that. Ants spread seeds, and 9% of all flowering plants spread their seeds like that.
Oh, Chris, can you stop? Like, just for me, can you stop saying the phrase "spread your seed" like every time?
Because there's no other way to say that. How else do I say that?
So they're wild oats.
It's like, yeah, like, because every time it's just like, well, plants drizzle over animals gets caught in their fur, right? I'm like, oh, please.
Yes, technically that's what they're doing. And then internally with animals, so they, like, ingest the seeds and then, like, fly around and poop somewhere else.
Marcus is having some troubles with this segment.
Yeah, I know.
My brain is just, I can't stop. Like, I know it's immature and I know it's stupid, but I cannot just disconnect it right now.
That's a shame, because usually we have such a consistently high maturity level on this podcast.
I know. You're ruining our reputation.
Oh, all right, Chris, keep going. Just get through this.
And then one of the ways that we actually mentioned in one of our other episodes, Marcus mentioned it in our All Plants Are Carnivorous episode, the sandbox tree it can shoot seeds up to 150 feet.
Whoa!
Whoa. So those are just like alternative ways. And then pollination also has different ways, so it doesn't also rely just on wind. Actually, only 19.6% of plants rely on wind to spread pollination, or pollen. And 80% relies on what they call biotic pollination. So like insects, birds, lizards, mammals, just all animals.
Mm-hmm.
So 80% of all plants would be fine without wind.
Alrighty.
Yeah, so it's not as bad as we really thought. And then we've only really looked at like the positive effects of wind, but wind actually has negative effects on plants too. So wind reduces the tree growth. It can
How so?
So it can erode away soils, which isn't good for trees. It can damage the limbs and twigs. Plants near the coast can get damaged by wind and salt spray from the ocean. And then plants can also get damaged from sand abrasion. So like wind blows around sand and it halts its growth that way. So those are like negative effects of wind. So if there was no wind, only like 20% of plants would die. So 80% would be fine. And that 80% would grow bigger than they are right now. They'd be healthier and they'd be bigger.
And they would fill in that 20% gap left by the other plants.
Yeah, eventually they would. So our plant life would be fine. Not all the plants would die for once.
Overall, good for plants?
Yeah, overall good for plants, maybe.
All right.
Well, that's gotta be a first for us. I don't think we've ever fixed plants before.
Plants, they're like always the first one to go.
Well, actually, the carnivorous plants episode, I think the plants won out a lot.
Yeah, but then
to
we
us.
died too. In this scenario, we live as well as the plants.
Also, I think even in the carnivorous plants ones, I still managed to kill all the plants.
Yeah, well, Ben, that's your fucking problem. That's your...
Yeah.